those of you that are a little bit younger might not remember the internet when it wasn't there and when it was there. And in about 1999, I was the sales and marketing director of a big UK distributor, and people were in the board were saying, "Oh, this internet thing, nobody's really using it," and what have you. Now, 1999, you can't. And I said, we are using it. Everybody's using it. He's like, no, they're not. So in our price guide, I sent out a questionnaire to customers, plumbers, who was using the internet. We also did an internal questionnaire for staff who was using it. Now, possibly quite a lot of the blokes might be using it nefariously, so we didn't ask them what they were using it for. We just asked them whether they were using it. And 33% of all our customers in 1999 were using it for business, and 75+% of our staff were using it to book holidays, possibly a bit of nefarious stuff, and other things. And what I was going to say when I heard about the no, we're not really using AI was, well, your staff are and your kids are, because there's some huge improvements in productivity. Anyway, so that's good. Actually, we are using it. So that's a step. So what I'd like to do then is to maybe ask the panel here, what are their experiences in either businesses or where they're working of AI use? What are you coming across that's having the most productive impact?
I think to start, so I'm Courtney, Frazer-Bates. I run the marketing and sales for Home Energy, so marketing and sales. So similar to your story, is using that to cut down on the work on our side. So we use it for image creation or content writing and copy or anything like that. So that's the first step. But the things we're starting to look at, not so much in my team, but in the company, is AI for solar design. So now you can use Google Earth, get any building that you like, put it together, put the postcode in, it will just start to overlay exactly how many panels you need. It takes 3-4 man hours out of the equation, so we can lower our prices and not have as many overheads. So that's the first place for us.
So I've heard about some phenomenal use of AI for companies in videos, in AI, in image creation. Would you just explain, because some of our audience might not be aware of how you do that or what you're using to do that?
Yeah, so there's a few different ones out there. So you find one of the providers, and it's literally similar to ChatGPT. You just type in roughly what you want. So for us, for solar panels, you can put in, gentleman and lady installing solar panels, and it will create an image that looks photorealistic for exactly what you need. So it's like when you put a white paper together, you want an exact picture of what it is you're explaining in that. You just type it in, it will create the image. Videos as well. We've now started running YouTube ads for the first time ever, and I went and created it myself in literally about 5 minutes. So rather than getting a video creator in, sorry to the guys in there filming and stuff, so not trying to take your work, but so just put in there, I need a solar video with these sort of things. We talk about solar, talk about heat pumps, EV, and it created a video in literally 5 minutes, put a little budget in, and it's now running on YouTube, doing better than our general pay-per-click ads for search. So literally saved a lot of time. It's got a small team because we can just use AI to do most of the work for you now.
Fantastic. What about you? You must have come across, John, lots of applications.
I think the most common is very much that content creation, so either writing or replacing people having to write things from scratch. A couple of areas where I think it's really, really going to transform things is image verification, so around quality and looking at images to spot defects, etc. The one area where I pick up that companies definitely won't touch this is around research and development, because that is the crown jewels. That is a lot of the, particularly around sort of products. So if you use that technology, the fear is, how do you keep it within your business, and how doesn't it suddenly become something that everyone else can learn from as well? But that's the only one caution area I've picked up.
I might challenge there a little, because in one of the organisations I sit on the board of, BRE, we have some incredible data that's IP protected, and we're looking at training our own IP AI on our own data, so that then people can ask it questions out, all sorts of different questions, but only us.
Yeah, that would be the key.
Because the data that we're going to train it on is our fantastic historic data.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
I was just going to say, just to follow up that point, the tools that you use with ChatGPT, that a lot of that is open source technology. So it's really, the value is actually in the data that sits behind it. So you can use that open source technology and link it with your own data. So you don't have to share your data with a wider audience. You can just keep it to yourself. And that's, follow-up point there.
Yeah.
But for us as software developers, we benefit from usage of AI as well. When we're just writing software, we use something called Copilot, which is a GitHub project. You may have heard of GitHub. It's where we store a whole bunch of code. And we can use GitHub Copilot to eliminate, boilerplate work. So as I'm writing into my IDE, and so into my programming space, it's prompting stuff for me. So it's taking away stuff for me, the sort of the simple stuff that is easy to forget, like what's the name of this component that I need to use, and then instantly it's there. It's given me an example usage of it, and then I can say, yeah, I'll accept that, and then I will tweak it. So you're changing your role as a developer to that process that we talked about earlier, just like verifying stuff. It doesn't take away the complex nature, because it can't, but it can take away a lot of that boilerplate stuff and really speeds up your process.
Brilliant. And Duncan, what have you seen being implemented in and around your organisation, maybe not just manufacturing?
Yeah, so in and around our organisation, one of the key AI things that we've implemented and tweaking at the moment is around supply chain, around forecasting, and around creating what-if scenarios. So what if we run out of this component, how's it going to affect the manufacturer, or how's it going to affect the supply of X number of products into our supply chain, forward supply chain.
I think something you spoke about earlier that really touched me was how you're bringing staff on board. Now, automation is often a difficult area because you're looking at the workforce, the shop floor, and they're thinking, how's this going? How are you dealing with that in other areas where you are looking at AI? I thought there was some really big lessons for us there. This is not going to do away with your job.
Yeah. So one of the areas which I didn't touch on in the presentation that is actually quite important is we actually employ 2 in-house software developers and program developers. You can, as an SME, you can go out and buy a major MRP system or ERP system, etc. But none of them is going to be tailored bespokely to your business. So we employ 2 that will actually take that data from that ERP system in our case. Will then analyse that data, write programs, etc., and make sure the data set is there. So one, it's visually it's nice to look at data as opposed to a screen, if you like. So the way it's laid out and set, it's easy to follow, easy to use, but also it's much more easier to manipulate in the specific ways we want as a business, or what we want to achieve from that data.
And Tom, when you go into businesses and you're there to make them more productive, make them more efficient, how is that communicated with staff?
Yeah, so there is a sort of a slight fear, isn't there, that we're all going to get replaced. But what we tend to actually, when we start talking with people, the outcome of the conversation isn't that your role or you are going to get replaced. It's just aspects of your role. So you just become more productive. So yes, there's a cost to introducing this, but the point is that it frees up your time and you can work on the stuff that is more complex. Ultimately, you're doing the same as you were before, but you're actually doing a bit more because AI is taking away the boring stuff. Yeah. So you can focus on the high value stuff.
Right. John.
Jim,
sorry, Jim.
I think we're missing the point. The reality is robots will replace vacancies. I was trying to say this earlier, the challenge we have, and Western society as a whole has, a problem with ageing workforces and fewer people that are available to do the jobs they used to do. So for me, it's very much removing the stuff that robots are very good at, highly repetitive, mundane typically, sometimes dangerous applications, and then deploy human beings for things that they're actually very good at. And that's really, that's the change that we have to help people and humans understand and come along that journey. But the reality is, all of the media is about companies cannot grow and realise the opportunity and potential they have because they can't get hold of people. So for me, it's deploying the right technology at the right time in the right way.
Courtney?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it changes some things you can't do yet, so like strategy. So currently my job is safe because I still need to tell it what to do. You can't replace a salesperson, at this point in time. It's not smart enough to go out and have that emotive sort of element to it. So it will change that bottom line, like you said, the more boring, menial tasks, but you still need the people to tell the AI what to do at this point in time. Hopefully it doesn't change too much or we'll all be out of jobs, but currently it's a tool to be used, but like anything, when a hammer was invented, someone still needs to wield that, and it's still in that space at the moment. I think it's a long time away from being able to replace the workforce.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, please, fire away.
Duncan mentioned validation, and I think just the flyer for this event by Switchplane, I presume Switchplane, right? I presume that was AI generated because, this was advertised as manufacturing Eastbourne. And what do we find? A Chinese lady, a sassy Chinese lady in a big factory which is nowhere in Eastbourne, anyone can see that, right? Full of robot arms. So somebody did a marketing ad for this sort of flyer and said, oh, give me the future of manufacturing. And AI came back with a sassy Chinese lady with her arms crossed in front of these robot arms, right? And no one sort of validated that, did they? Because that is nowhere near Eastbourne. And this gives me the message that, so the future of manufacturing is get everything made in China, is it? That's what it's telling me. So, I think the validation of that could have been better, a bit more local to Eastbourne.
But there was an element of adding diversity in, because when we first created the image, it was just a man there standing there still.
Well, you could have anybody standing.
We do have Chinese people and Japanese people that live in Eastbourne and
Yeah,
work in
sure
manufacturing. I don't want to be rude.
Doesn't represent.
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised. But yes, you do have a valid point. And people, when they're given these tools, they can produce stuff and then not verify it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we did actually talk about that internally, as it happens, and we did sign off on it based on the fact that we were looking at diversity rather than looking at just a white middle class guy standing in front of a regular big machine.
And maybe to the wider point of, does that mean China has the jobs and whatever? I think one of the things that we've been hearing is the sheer scale of productivity improvements that we'll be seeing, which will make that possibly less likely, or probably less likely. But I'd like to just open it up to the audience as well before I go back. I've got a few more questions to ask sadly the guys. Unless Donna, you want to come sit next to me? Donna. So do we have any questions? Yeah.
They're based around regulation as that evolves, because we know it will. I think you can see talk about within government circles all day. And then security. Look, security is also one of those subjects that is constantly pushing.
Yeah.
I even had a phishing email test this morning come through. So all those aspects as well, you may well be putting AI into a business, but you've then got to make sure it's got that adaptability to be able to handle those changes as they come through. And you sort of how do people see that?
So just so that I can clarify for the question for the panel, what would the question be?
So the question would be is how do you see the regulation changes or that may potentially come in the future, and how do you then ensure that the use of those regulation changes and what it means to your business in terms of changes you may then have to make?
Okay, Jim, do you want? Courtney, do you
I
want
think
to
the first one will be sort of like in Instagram now. We have to say it's an ad. If it's an ad, I think we're going to have to get to the point where we say this is an AI-generated image, for instance. On that, you'd have to have that in the bottom right. This is not a real image, something like that, which we don't currently have to declare whether it was where it was generated. Same as the copy. If we write a whole thought leadership piece, we don't do this. But if we write one on the the future of renewable energies, for instance, currently you could just say that was my work. You might have to like clarify that this was generated by AI to make sure people understand that. And again, that's creating a job where there'll probably be a AI compliance officer in every company, like there was for GDPR when it started to come in. You needed a data protection officer that didn't exist 10 years ago. So now you have an AI, but literally everything that goes out the door that's AI generated, you have to go through their office, and they're the one who gets sued if it doesn't pass.
I agree with that, Courtney. I think it will become even more relevant in education. So in examining bodies, checking that they've because at the moment you have to quote if you've quoted it from the book or from the internet. What about AI? So actually academic referencing, we need to take that.
About that this morning, just on the news today, about teachers are having to spot.
Yeah, and how?
And that's the very question. How do you stop?
Yeah, so actually it needs to go into the academic referencing process, which is a formal process that learners learn when they're with us, and how to declare work that is not theirs and theirs, and how to differentiate between the two. But the most important thing for learners is that they take that knowledge, whether it's sourced through a book or online or through AI, and that they use that to determine what the outcome is for them. So that's the critical bit that we still need to see in academic work.
Wait for the first AI chatbot to
I think it's also at the end of the day, what are we after with learners? Them learning and knowing the knowledge.
Yeah.
How we get to that might change, but the key is that they walk away with the knowledge that you want them to have.
Because if they don't have that, Paul, critically, then your businesses won't have that with them coming through. So it's a really hard thing that you have to navigate together.
Exams.
Yeah.
I think that, and then it also sits on the
difficult
security side of things. So if we're trying to protect your IP, for example, particularly then pushing into open open source data and those types of things. It's I think you mentioned GitHub previously. Yes, I mean we used to work with GitHub and NDA to ensure that we have protection across those types of things.
Jim, what's your view on the regulation side of things?
I concur. The regulation is way behind and is going to be continually playing catch up. Clearly, there are risks. 49% of manufacturers have been hit by some sort of cyber attack. The other 51% is just a matter of time when, and the more you use these systems, the more potentially exposed you are if you don't take the right precautions. So education is going to be absolutely critical. Not only helping people to understand if you use these tools, that's great, but how do you apply that information, that knowledge, whatever it is that you're generating, is actually doing what it needs to do for your business. So and government is on its back foot. We've said as a nation that we want to be leaders. By being leaders, you're naturally going to be pushing the boundaries on this technology. So there is an element of risk with that. But if you lock it all down, then equally you can stifle the innovation and potential opportunity. So it's a fascinating topic.
Duncan, any view on regulation or Tom?
Yeah, I have a view on the regulation side. I think as a country, and probably as a world, we're walking into the same situation where we have with social media, where it becomes very dangerous if you don't regulate it from the start, because a lot of the social media platforms are not being used for what they were designed for originally, and the amount of misinformation that's going around with that. When you start getting into AI, there is no regulation at the start. Again, are we walking into the same trap? And are companies like us, for example, walking into a situation where we're using this technology in-house, but we're not protecting it from outside players coming in and using AI to take that information? And what can you put in place to do that, to stop that?
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The security aspect is huge. We're all sitting here with the best of intentions thinking about AI, but there are people guaranteed around the world that are using AI right now to produce phishing emails that look much more convincing than the ones that you've had in the past. They don't have the spelling mistakes, they don't have the bad text at the end of the email that help you to pick up this stuff. It's going to be a big problem going forward, and so absolutely regulation, and we all know it's going to take time, and because quite frankly people that make regulation don't know what they're doing. and it's going to take time for those skills to make their way to that part of government, essentially.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that we're starting to have regulation with on social media with TikTok and what have you starting to happen, but it's possibly more geopolitically aimed rather than. Yeah.
So can I just comment?
Please do.
Travelling within the global environment and the different cultures, surely sitting behind that is top-down behaviours and cultural behaviours as well as that influence how we use AI as much as if the regulations are there. At the very heart of it is the operational excellence piece of the minimum expected behaviours that can come through and should be respected in the first instance. I've seen that we have a standardised approach and we do the same thing, but the behaviours vary greatly, and that influences how we see it.
Thank you.
I think it's a good point to your earlier point, actually, about how maybe the view of how it's being used is different. So you said about the internet, people within the company not thinking it was being used, and actually it was. Is that there's not really a culture set from the top of the company on how to use AI because they're assuming it's not being used, was actually people on the ground floor are using it. So, for instance, myself, if I was not involved in AI, my team might be creating copy using AI and I'm not aware of it and haven't set any rules around using it because I'm assuming we're not. So it is educating higher ups around how much it is being used to make sure that they set the culture internally about what to use AI for.
So on exact, could I have a show of hands, but hands in the air that I can see like this, of who has, in the companies that they have, an AI policy?
We've just done it.
Yeah. It'll take you on ChatGPT.
Did you use ChatGPT to make it?
I actually don't know. That's a good question.
2 minutes to have an AI policy, but if you don't, then people are using it at the moment. Well, how are they using it? To what extent is your data being put into ChatGPT? Where is it okay that it is helping you write the salespeople's benefits and features and benefits and whatever? Well, that's fine. But how far into the technology side of things that's got some IP on your, are the engineers involved in some AI? So I would highly recommend fairly quickly getting onto ChatGPT when you get back and putting an AI policy together.
Paul, could I add something to that?
So it's lack of regulation as it sits now, probably
Absolutely. All the companies that I work with, all of them, and the ones that I sit on the board, we all have an AI policy. It's so easy. It's so easy.
Could I add to that? Is another question probably should be answered is how many companies allow employees to use their own electronic equipment that has ChatGPT on it, but also has sensitive data from the company on it that's not protected by company controls?
Well, to that point, how many people know that if you've got the apps, TikTok, it's listening to you? You know that?
So's Alexa.
Yeah. When whatever you're doing, if you've got your phone in your pocket, it's listening to you. Oh, sorry.
Talking of regulations, do we think that net zero is just a code word for carbon tax? And I'll give you an example. I use a lot of stainless steel in manufacturing. It used to be made up in the northeast. A nice, and I'll be controversial, a nice clean gas-powered furnace. It used to come down on a nice clean Euro 6 diesel engine vehicle to the Midlands and distributed through the supply chain. So a journey of maybe 500 miles maximum. Okay. Due to national strategies on chasing net zero, we've pretty much closed down, and the very last factory has shut down, despite Tatar's previous promises. Shut down Port Talbot, but shut down stainless steel a long time ago. It's now manufactured, well, first it went to Belgium, and then it's now gone to Asia. So suddenly, my nice clean stainless steel, which was made in the UK, has to come from India, right? Which I can guarantee is made in a coal blast furnace. Okay, and then it is shipped on a stinky freight liner. Okay, so a journey that used to be 500 miles is now 5,000 miles, much more damaging to the environment. And now the government wants to tax me for my supply chain because I have no other choice. Where do I get my material from? So manufacturing businesses in the UK cope with this complete lack of strategy and the wide vision strategy of the UK, where our strategy is net zero first, everything else can go to hell, and we'll just buy it from China. Actually, we'll start a war in the Middle East just to keep those shipping lanes open, so we can buy the stuff from China, right? It doesn't make any sense at all.
So who would like to take that thorny one on?
So I have to declare an interest. Part of Make UK is UK Steel, okay? So we represent those steel manufacturers. So I can relate to a lot of what you said. But a lot of those, that industry was being transformed in the 1980s. So it's not a net zero driven thing. It's a market forces thing, I would argue. We strongly believe that there needs to be a domestic capability to produce steel. For all of the nasty reasons that are happening in the world right now, at times of conflict, absolutely you need to have a sovereign capability to produce some of those fundamental materials. The Tata thing with electric arc furnaces, that is about cleaning up steel production. And obviously, as a nation, we generate a lot of scrap steel, and by using those arc furnaces,
scrap steel won't help.
But that decision was not made because of net zero. That was global companies deciding where they were going to manufacture those materials. But you're absolutely right. You have to slow that down and stop.
If you just forgive me a second, because I'm going to tell you another story. So forgive me for a moment. But I went to a building industry lunch back in 1999 in climate change, and we had an economist talking about the importance of what you have to do for global warming. And needless to say, this was a construction industry event, so everybody was just talking over it, and nobody was interested at all. And this economist said, okay, I can see that I'm not with naturally environmentally driven people, so I'll ask you another thing. Do you want to be reliant on your energy for your oil on the Saudis, for your gas on the Qataris and Russians? You could hear a pin drop, because for those that might not be, and I am quite climate change oriented, but for those that aren't necessarily, what a high price of energy today does is it drives technologies in new energy. And I guarantee you, and you can take this to the bank, in 15 years' time, your energy costs in the UK and in a lot of European countries will be lower than they are in China or in India, guaranteed, because the costs of what's happening is also driving fusion. Now, fusion will be here in 15, 16 years ahead, but it's only been money put into it in vast amounts to be able to, because the high costs that we are suffering from today for energy costs. But it's you can't have it.
I would. Well, again, no big vision here from any one government. But all the windmills, right? They contain over 1,000 kilograms of steel, right? All these offshore, not 1 gram is made in the UK. So again, and solar panels, 99% of them are made in China. So when you say there's jobs in green energy, we're installers. We're not manufacturers, we're installers.
Well, we are manufacturers. There are huge offshore wind farm manufacturing, of which they're using somebody else's raw steel, but they're making
So Siemens are in the northeast, but gentleman is correct. A lot of that supply chain is in Europe, and some of the big blades are made in the northeast. But the reality is, a lot of the other technology isn't, and that raises a point. That is where, over decades, the UK had made a political decision to offshore a lot of that capability, and those supply chains have been hollowed out. The opportunity for future technologies, things like the small modular reactors that Rolls-Royce have generated. Now, there is a fantastic opportunity for UK manufacturers to get involved and produce the parts for that. The building that it sits in will be modular, so you make 100 of those or however many they're going to do, and all of the other kit. The challenge for us as manufacturers is if we cannot react and respond to that demand, they will go offshore, and if they go offshore, that will never come back to the UK. So it's a fantastic opportunity, but if we don't get some of the stuff that we talked about earlier about people and technology and skills right, then we'll miss the boat. And that's the political
and
choice.
this huge investment in hydrogen, in EV cells, these vast amounts of that in the UK that's going on, again driven by net zero. So there are. It's sort of a two-sided sword, I think. Any other questions? Yeah.
I think that just sort of highlights really why we should be championing manufacturing in this country, because I believe that we can build that stuff in this country. Because there is skill gaps, there's no doubt about that. But the technology is there, and we have the will to do it. Maybe not so much the government will, which is maybe why things are manufactured so much in this country. But one of the reasons why we're all here is because we believe in manufacturing in this country, right? So let's try and pull that stuff back and maybe keep the government along the way to go, come on, let's incentivise manufacturing in this country.
Absolutely. We're 8th now. We're not 9th anymore. We're 8th. 7th is Italy. Can we not overtake Italy? Manufacturing? Of course we can. So I couldn't agree with you more. Just up the road, I don't know if there's anybody from Kurt J. Lesker, they make stuff for the particle accelerators and SpaceX. We've got extraordinary manufacturing that would make those machines in your picture there, Donna, look old-fashioned, just up in Hastings. Any other questions?
So can I just come back on that point? One of the key things that helped us raise the profile and the importance of manufacturing in the UK was COVID and the ventilating challenge.
Of course, yeah.
The fact that the supply chains to the Far East broke down and you couldn't get those parts meant that we had to be very creative, and it was technology, so it was digital technologies that meant a consortium of 5 different companies that were from 5 different industries were able to put virtual factories together with 5 separate teams working collaboratively, using things like additive manufacturing to manufacture all of those bits that normally come from China that actually we could make here. And we made 1,000 ventilators, and the rest is history. That raised the profile of our sector across the country magnificently. The challenge for us is that will get forgotten over time. So us, the company I work for, that's why I get out of bed to try and promote what you guys do as an industry. And that's why we say to the government, you have to develop an industrial strategy. Because once we understand what it is that we're trying to champion here, because some things naturally do need to be, will be made in different parts of the world. We just need to understand where can we have a competitive edge, where can we develop those capabilities, and where can we excel, and then the opportunities to sell that across the world is key.
Because that definitely highlighted, during COVID, that we, as a country, rely heavily on manufacturing to be done outside, especially in China, which caused a lot of problems for us. So definitely we need to highlight how important manufacturing is in this country.
So reshoring and nearshoring happened as a result of that. The optimist in me thinks, well, we can build on that and do more of it. The pessimist is, do you know what, over time it might gravitate back to the Far East? I don't know the answer, but it's...
There is an answer, and there is an answer, and I've seen the answer. And something Marshall Tufflex do, and something that we do, and I'd challenge you all. And I think the manufacturing day in September is fantastic. But are you getting kids into your factories? Are you reaching out to the local schools? I remember doing the bed race over in Hastings, and at Marshall Tufflex we had some fantastic engineers, so we had one hell of a bed. And this guy starts walking over to me and the HR manager, what have you. And I have to say, I was slightly prejudiced because he'd got tattoos on his face and stuff, so I was sort of budging along so that the HR manager, and he said, "Are you the boss of Marshall Tufflex?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "My son has been round one of your factories. He's 8, and he said, it's amazing." He said he absolutely had a fantastic time. He said he didn't respect me. All his friends' dads did quite interesting jobs and other things, but he always thought, I work in a factory, and he never really thought of it. And he came home that night and said, "Wow, Dad, can you tell me all? I've just been in a factory. It's amazing." Now, you know, I'm almost filling up now, but then me and Steve were like, you know, we were gone. That impact you can have, because if you get kids, you know, young kids, into factories before they get told by other people that they're these terrible places and what have you, it blows their mind. I don't know, it was at the time, but I'm guessing, John, it's still the top. They prefer it to the zoos. It is the top ranked visit, is a plastics factory for kids in the schools in Hastings. So this is part of what you guys should do, yeah?
Funny you should say that. We've been working with Chichester College recently, and we've had some T-level students come around. And just for a bit of a laugh, we was randomly X-raying anything they had in their pockets. Just to show that manufacturing can be interesting, and it is a rewarding job. And as a result, we've now got one of those T-level students working with us.
And your companies, you know, not only do you have all the manufacturing, you have accounting, you have marketing, you have, you know, whole slope. Donna?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of agree with that, because the risk is, if they're hearing that actually it's a trade not to go into because it's tiny or it's all outsourced or whatever, then they're not going to inspire the next wave of innovators to come in and make these changes and to bring it into the UK. And actually that's where it needs to, you know, where it needs to start. When we go back to Jim's stat, that 145,000 apprentices pre-pandemic to 45,000 post-pandemic, I can actually personally vouch for that in our kind of little world. I was previously at Chichester College Group before East Sussex College Group, so know the FE landscape really well, and I saw it. We went from, we would average at around 85 apprentices in engineering a year before the pandemic, and in the pandemic it dropped to about 12. I remember I had to produce reports for SLT at that time, and I was saying, you know, we had feast or famine, and it was famine in engineering, and sadly it hasn't recouped, and we're still on a journey. So it really is about inspiring the next generation with opportunities that can really change lives.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
And the businesses.
Yeah, please.
So in 2019, I did the first work experience with the official one. I had 3 students from local school at 15. I had one that came up with women's to be an engineer, another one that died in the VP, where he didn't know what he wanted to do. Over that 5 days, with the help of 30 people in the business hall, because everyone said yes, because something too scary. They had a week where a building they'd driven past in Burgess Hill became a really exciting opportunity. And it just got, I remember they did the presentation, but one guy, one of the students, he didn't have one, I said, we have to get anyone. And then afterwards I told him with breakfast. And he did the best presentation. And it's amazing how just a small time frame can make such a great memory, and feedback was we go to put better employed work experience with.
Absolutely.
And we have T-level students, and what Edwards does really well, they do grow people, and so we do have a graduate program, we do have apprentices, and that's such an important need for business, right?
Yeah,
I think we had 44 applicants to, well, 44 apprentices. And this is where we are right now. So it brings us partly full circle there. If we can get investment to bring AI in, the cobots, your robots, we can make it interesting for the younger generation. We know it also reduces our labour cost, which is one of the major factors that used to drive businesses out to low-cost countries, particularly on the labour side. But of course, the next challenge would be logistics, particularly with net zero and green drives. They want local for local. So if your market is in Asia and you're manufacturing in the UK, then the next pushback for you as a business would be the logistics involved. And I don't think AI is going to struggle a little bit more with that challenge as to how to push back and compete against that.
Thank you. And I would say it's fantastic the kids, but 8-year-olds, start early getting folks in. Any other questions before I go back to the panel? Donna?
You just mentioned there about investment in some of the new technology, so I was just keen to learn what funding pots might exist, Jim, that companies could potentially tap into to help them to invest in some of these new technologies.
Made Smarter is a program that was announced is going to be a national program. It was trialled in the northwest and then it migrated across the country. It's coming to this part of the world in 2025, so that will be, I think, akin to kind of the manufacturing advisory service concept. So it's very much understand where are the problems within a business, and then is there a digital capability that can help solve that. UK RI, they have some programs where you can they're innovation biased, so again where relevant they're funding opportunities, but cards on the table in this part of the world, it's very fragmented, so there may be some very local funding pots available. We've pushed hard for things like the 100% if you invest, you can claim back 100% of what's it called?
R&D?
It's not the R&D. Yeah, tax credits.
AI, they have a specific name for it, which I've completely forgotten.
Sussex University.
Yeah, it's Sussex Uni, and they launched or relaunched their AI sort of program. And so we're seeing a lot of these students very interested in that subject. And it's actually quite tricky for us because, as we've spoken about, not everyone is ready to take that workforce on. So we've almost got a workforce that's ahead of the game, whilst also then struggling to hire people to do almost like grunt work, for the sake of a better word. So, for us as software developers, it's not the easiest challenge, but it's certainly getting easier, I'll say.
Sure. Yeah.
Duncan?
It's a real challenge, finding skilled engineers in the area of East Sussex. Well, apologies. You'll need an engineer to fix that now. But yeah, it's a real challenge around this area, and specifically where we are in the Hastings area. There's a number of small businesses, but there's no real overriding arch of major business that's providing funding for schemes like they do in the Midlands or Bristol areas. So it's a real challenge, and Jim mentioned earlier, we're seeing the 1066 manufacturing group and some of the members are here today. And it's a challenge that everybody in that group faces, and one that we as a group are trying to face and talk to people like Donna in the college and the university, etc., about how we can change that, how we can work together. It's really about how the businesses interact with the colleges and the schools, etc., for the future. Jim?
It's the number one issue facing our members, and that's why ultimately you've got to fish in very different ponds. It's a cliche, but most of the manufacturing businesses I go into, there are lots of white, middle-aged, old guys, and that has to change. We've got to recruit young women, people from other diverse backgrounds, because if we don't, you're just not going to have the people available. So it's a big issue.
Courtney?
Yeah, it's just like definitely not in the manufacturing industry per se, but part of the reason with the college is trying to get the skilled engineers on the job. There's the same problem facing renewables as people who aren't skilled enough to close up gaps in net zero. But touchy subject based on what we just talked about, but obviously we want to push that net zero mission target. Helps our business, but not filling in there. But personally, on the sales side, it comes back to having the strategy. So when we're hiring for someone, if their CV covers all the stuff they can do with AI and the latest technology, is understanding how we're going to use that in the business to whether they're a viable candidate. There's no point someone coming on board who knows more about AI than me, but my marketing sales strategy doesn't include that element. They're not sort of worthwhile for me, even though they've got a skill that is super valuable. So it's again setting that culture from the top. Are we going to use AI? How are we going to use it? What can it be used for? Are we happy with that? How does that fit into the wider strategy for the business? So then someone with that on their CV is, that stands out to us as something we're looking for.
I think closing it's probably the biggest issue we all face is recruitment, retention. It's only going to get worse. There's 600,000 vacancies, something like that in the economy at the moment, 700,000. It'll be 1 million by the summer. AI can improve your productivity in the area it's put in. I can't put a number. It can be 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. Your customers are using it. Your suppliers are using it. Your staff are using it. What if your competitors are using it and you're not? And you have all these issues with recruitment and retention and they don't. I shall pass back to your good self, Donna.
Thank you very much.